Hola mi gente, ya regresé con otro video, otra entrevista y esta vez tuve la oportunidad de hablar con mi amigo Felix. Felix es dominicano, es youtuber, es un youtuber de viajes y durante esta conversación hablamos sobre cómo él ha podido aprender el inglés en la República Dominicana y también aquí en Nueva York. Así que espero que les guste porque esta vez hicimos la entrevista completamente en inglés para todos ustedes. Así que no dudes en suscribirte, darle like al video y también hacer clic en la campanita para recibir notificaciones cada vez que subo un nuevo video. Y con eso, arrancamos.
This is a little weird.
Why?
Because we have never spoken in English together.
That's very true.
So this is gonna be interesting. So it wasn't your choice. What happened? What happened?
So I was about 10, 11 years old, living in the DR, living in the Dominican Republic, when my mother told me, you need to go to English classes starting on Monday. I was like, wait, what? What am I doing?
What was your perception of English?
Where my relationship to English was very funny, because all I knew about English was English music, and I used to sing, and I didn't even know what I was saying.
Same, in Spanish.
So I was like,
what were you singing?
I don't even know. I used to listen to rap, hip hop, all types of genres, but I didn't know what I was saying. I didn't know what I was, the meaning of any of the words that I was saying. And so that was my first encounter with the language.
So then your mom comes to you and she says,
she comes to me, I'm listening to you when you're in the bathroom. You have no clue what you're saying. You need to go to English class. Did it for 1-2 years and I didn't like it at all. I didn't know what I was doing.
It was hard?
It wasn't hard. I think the hardest part was having to do something that I didn't want to do.
Well, why did you not want to do it?
I don't know. I wanted to be doing something different. I wanted to be with my friends. I wanted to be home. I wanted to do homework.
So was it a timing thing? It was
in my plans. As a kid, if it's not something you chose to do, it's not something that you're gonna willingly do.
Okay.
So, but then something funny happened when I started getting the language. When I started understanding the language, my relationship with English changed, because now I was able to understand the songs that I was listening to. So I was like, it's finally clicking. So I think on Monday I'm gonna be early to class.
How long did that take?
It took 2 years, I would say.
2 years. Okay, that's not bad. 2 years in the Dominican Republic.
In the Dominican Republic, only studying 2-3 times a week.
And
I wasn't going home to go over the lessons or anything
really?
like that. It was the hour
in school.
Just the hour and a half that I was in school 2-3 times a week, and the homework that I was doing. That's all the lessons that all the time that I was spending trying to learn. So if you're trying to learn, it's even better now because you can go on YouTube. You can watch his channel. You can listen to music with the lyrics.
Yep.
There's a lot of tools that I didn't have back then.
Right.
So that hour and a half that I was spending 2-3 times a week back then, that time today, it's gonna be worth 10 hours back then. Yeah. So there's a lot more tools that you guys can use today to improve and learn even faster.
Did you get to practice with native speakers at all?
Native speakers in DR, like to American, not at all.
Wow.
Not at all. So that wasn't even.
So
not even a possibility.
How long did it take you to actually become fluent?
When I came here. Okay. So I graduated school. I was like 14. It took me 4 years going to English classes. Then I came here 3 years after I graduated, so I wasn't even practicing the language back in DR. Came here, got my first job, and got my first. I was forced to only speak in English for those 5 to 8 hours, and I was like, whoo. I mean, I'm not the best at I'm not even today. I'm not the best at the language.
You're pretty good,
but it felt easy. It felt smooth. I didn't struggle at any point. Of course, there was like moments and conversations that I couldn't. Things that I wanted to say that I couldn't know how to put together. Yeah. But it slowly started to I wasn't afraid to speak. And I think that's the main. I wasn't afraid of my accent. I wasn't afraid of being wrong about anything. If I didn't know something, I would ask, what's the best way to say this? What am I pronouncing wrong, right?
Same.
So I think that's something that when I came here, that I think that was the one thing that helped me the most. That I was not afraid to speak, and I wasn't afraid, or I didn't back away from any conversation in English. You would have a test, conversation one-on-one with your two teachers actually.
Okay.
Listening to you, correcting, your scoring your pronunciation.
That word is impossible in Spanish and in English.
Yeah, there's still some words that I have a hard time in both languages.
Every time I am filming a video and I go to say pronunciación, I have to film it like 5 times because I say it wrong.
Yes, but that's the thing. That's what you gotta do when in whatever language, your main language, your first, your second, your third. There's words. It's part of speaking.
Yep.
You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna have to pronounce words 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Whatever times it takes, that's what you're gonna do.
Yep.
Get it out. Whatever it takes, get it out. After I came here, fell in love with traveling, and then I was glad that my mother forced me to study English, because then I was able to communicate everywhere that I went to. Because
talk about that.
about the travels.
About traveling and then like being able to communicate like in English, because like if you had not learned English.
Well, I think the first experience was when I got here.
Right. Okay.
Speaking to people that only spoke English. In my job. Then I got to school. I went to college. Then that helped me a lot, because that's when I started writing, actually doing essays and having to think in the language. Now I was writing 4 or 5 pages.
So you went to college here as well?
Yes. I think that's what got me over the hump. That's what got me feeling 100% comfortable that I could do this video in English, that I could speak, that I could do a presentation in English and thinking in the language. It's not the same when you're trying to write 4 or 5 pages and you're like, me llamo, and then you translate, my name is Juan, uno, dos. You guys understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I studied Spanish in college and it was the same thing. I was taking a lot of courses, classes about history, classes about culture, classes about many different things. It was just all in Spanish, and that's like how I learned how to, give presentations in Spanish and write, long essays in Spanish.
Now, did you ever have that clicking moment? I feel that I didn't have that. I feel that I progressively, I was getting better at it each, semester, each year. I feel that I was getting better. But I've heard that for most people, there's like that one moment in which you're like, "Phew, I can do it."
Yeah.
Do you have that?
Yeah, sort of. It happened for me. So what it was I was bilingual for a long time before I realized.
But nobody knew it.
Well, I didn't know it. I didn't know it. Because I was always really hard on myself. Like I have really, really high standards. And so for me, I was studying Spanish for so long.
Now,
but
quick question. Do you think that's good or bad for someone that's learning a new language?
Ooh.
Question within the question.
Okay.
Because I feel that sometimes those high standards.
Here's the thing. Those high standards are the reason my Spanish is so good. But it is also the reason that the process was not very fun for me.
There you go.
I stressed myself out a lot unnecessarily. And I do believe I would have gotten to the same level that I am today if I would not have stressed so much about it. But I just, I'm really hard on myself. I'm a harsh critic. And so I was always telling myself, no, you're not good enough.
Now, what would you say was your biggest challenge? Before the click. To get back, we're gonna get back to the.
So it was the okay. So English and Spanish are interesting because they work differently in the world. They work very differently. For example, English is the world language. It's like the international language. Now, English and Spanish both have many different accents, different dialects all over the world that are very, very different. However, when it comes to English, the dialect that most of the world knows and most of the world is taught and most of the world speaks is the American dialect. So when it comes to English being an international language, everyone is really only learning, for the most part, one dialect. Yes, if you go to Europe, like in Spain, they're teaching the kids British English. In Russia, they do the same thing. But for the most part, when you actually go out into the world and interact with people who speak English, you're going to be speaking with an American accent. Like, even when I lived in Spain, all of the foreigners who were not Spanish or not Latin American, like Norwegians, Swedes, they all spoke perfect American English. But with Spanish, especially in the United States, there is no one sort of accent that you hear. You hear all of them. So for me,
all over the place.
Yeah, so for me, that was the most difficult part. Trying to, I was learning Spanish and I was learning it so well, but it was very difficult to be able to go out into the world, out in public, and
knowing that there was that big difference.
Well, yeah, because I would talk to people and I'd be like, I have no idea what you're saying. And they'd be like, I said this. And I'd be like, no, you didn't, because I would have understood that. That's not what you said. And then they're like, oh, it's because I have a Colombian accent, or I have a Puerto Rican accent, or I'm from Mexico, so we say it like this. And I was like, oh.
Now to this day, now that you're like fluent in Spanish, what's the hardest and what's the easiest accent that you've experienced?
So the hardest accent to this day, well,
to understand what they're talking,
it's actually not that hard anymore, but I would
say, or back then, what was the one that you struggled the most with? Venezuelan.
I had never heard a Venezuelan accent until I was 19 years old.
So you were never exposed to it?
I was never exposed to it, and to be honest, it is very unique. It is extreme. Like, it's one of those accents that I've heard other native speakers of Spanish say they have a difficult time understanding. But I went to school in New York City with a lot of Venezuelans, so it took me a while, but eventually.
And I think it's not even their accent; it's that they use a lot of like slang.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
And unique words.
Ridiculous.
We have 24 different ways of saying
like I would listen to Venezuelan conversations and be like, okay, you've said a lot of those words, and I know for a fact that like at least half of them are not real words. But that is a part of language, and that is why it is important to also make an effort to learn those things, especially if you're studying a language like Spanish, because in the United States, like I said, you're not going to hear just one type of Spanish. You're going to hear them all, so you need to be familiar with them all. And it's funny because in my last job, I worked for a Latino marketing agency that was like based in Mexico, Los Angeles, Argentina, España. And I remember my first week, I went out to LA to meet the team, and they actually brought a bunch of new hires from all of the different offices around the world to LA that week. And so we all went out and we were just talking in a bar. And we were just having a conversation. There's like Venezuelans, Colombians, Argentinians, Americans, me. And the CEO of the company, he comes up to me and he says, in this thick Argentinian accent, in Spanish, obviously, but he was saying, so you?
No, you say it in Spanish.
Es que vos puedes entender todo lo que todo el mundo está diciendo. And I was like, yeah, pero con todos los acentos diferentes. And I'm like, por eso me contraste, ¿no? Oh no, por eso.
So he was surprised that you could understand each and every single Spanish accent.
Yes, and I told him, well, the reason I can do that is because I realized that if I was going to speak Spanish in this country and understand it, I was going to have to be.
Now, there's something within that. Do you think New York helped to being able to?
Yes. Oh yeah.
To make the process faster.
Absolutely, specifically because so the Spanish is spoken in New York, Mexican, Puerto Rican, Dominican, and Colombian. Like, those are the four main ones that you hear in New York City. Those were the four main ones that I was studying before I moved here. So then when I got here, I had
right at home.
Yeah, and I was studying Spanish at university, and I was taking Spanish, I was taking Spanish classes with other native speakers who were born in the United States who were also studying Spanish, to just improve their speech, because even though they're native speakers, it's different when you are born and raised in the United States, because even if you're a native speaker, you don't get educated in Spanish. Like, you don't go to school in Spanish, so it's different. So I got to take classes with a lot of native speakers, so that helped. And then all the Venezuelans transferred to my university in my second year, and so then I had that I could practice. And returning to your question, then I went to Spain.
Back to the clicking point.
And so during that first summer in Spain, the strangest thing happened. I went to a party. like I did many nights. Well, this was the pregame. How do you say that in Spanish?
Calentamiento.
It was that before the party.
The warm up.
So I went to my friend's apartment. He was having all his friends over. So it was just a ton of Spaniards and 2 Americans, me and another friend. And it was like everybody was drinking, got very drunk, and it's Spain, so everybody's yelling and screaming and just all at the same time. And I remember my friend, he was just like, my head hurts, like this is too much. So he went to bed, and I stayed because, you know, I was the perfectionist. I was like, I will not be defeated. And I stayed, and like a half hour, I just sat there and just like let it all just come to me and just listened. And I swear, maybe like 20-25 minutes later, I felt something just change in my brain. I could literally feel it, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I could understand every single thing that everyone was saying at the same. Like I could understand every single individual conversation.
I think you were drinking some Rioja wine.
At the time. Oh, I was drinking everything. But the reason that was so significant is because the time lapse was so quick. Like I could viscerally remember
from 1 second to the other.
I could remember 5 minutes ago that sounded like gibberish, and now 5 minutes later, I understand exactly what you're saying. So that was the first.
So do you think it was your mindset that changed? Because you obviously knew the language at that point. Your mindset, your willingness to know.
Yeah, I think it was the fact that like I stepped back, I observed the situation, and I said, okay.
I think you let the language come to you.
Yes, I let it come to me because I was like, okay, everyone is talking at the same time, and everybody's drunk, and everybody's screaming, and I'm not a native speaker. Obviously, this is going to be a challenge for me, so I didn't put a lot of pressure on myself. I didn't like say, "Oh, you're stupid if you don't get." I let go of the pressure because I'm like, you shouldn't understand what this is. Like you've never been in this situation before. So I just sat back and I relaxed and I just listened for 20 minutes.
Patience,
and then just 20 minutes later, boom.
I think that was key to me too, because when I was my first year, I was so frustrated. Because I didn't have a clue what was happening. Yep. I didn't understand anything. Yep. So I'm like, at what point I'm gonna? It's been a year. We're so used to learning fast as kids.
Yeah.
You go to basketball, you know how to play basketball in 2 weeks. Go to baseball in a week, and you're like, I'm freaking.
Languages are not like that.
Languages, they need time. You need time, and it's easy now to look back and say, wow, I could have been more patient with myself. I could have given myself some more time. But that's something you need to understand. Yeah. That it's gonna take time. Yeah. It's gonna take practice, and it will come to you.
Patience is key, especially like if. Granted, I always say you don't really need patience if you're going to just move to the country and just be dropped off there. Because if you need to survive, you're gonna learn it in less than a year. I've seen people do that.
It's when it's out of need, you're gonna. Some guys are not willing. They can absorb the language quicker. Mm-hmm. So that's something that's why it's not good to compare yourself with others.
Exactly.
It's not a competition
at all.
It happens to in a different way with everyone.
And you don't have to be perfect.
You don't have to be perfect.
You don't have to be perfect.
I think that was the key to me. I wasn't afraid. I knew it was not my language, and that's key. It's not my first language, so I'm not afraid to make a mistake.
It took me a long time to learn. To be honest, I still struggle with that. I still struggle with
your high standards.
Yeah, like chill out. You don't have to be perfect. Like you don't have to be embarrassed if you say something
the
stupid.
fact that you can fluently speak more than one language, it's a blessing. So that's the way you gotta see it. Even if you're not fluent 100%, exactly. The fact that you can go to whatever country in the world and get by in that language, I think that it feels good. Yeah. So chillax, take it easy, and enjoy that you can speak more than one language.
Yeah. And if you can speak English and Spanish, you can communicate with 47% of the world.
On that other 53%, you can get by. You can be like
literally because with those two languages, you can sort of figure out how other languages work.
I've been to more than 70 countries in the world. Mm-hmm. I don't think I've been to any city or any town or any village, any place that I haven't been able to communicate
Bingo.
or get by or get what I want.
So yeah, those are our tips. That's how Felix learned English. That's more or less how I learned Spanish. So yeah.
And to close it up, just as learning any skill in life,
yes,
it's a never-ending process.
Yes, so you always have to be a student.
It'll never be perfect. It'll never be 100% done. Stay a student forever with any skill, any language, anything in life.
Bingo.
Be always willing to keep learning.
All right, cool. And that's it.
Ciao!
Until the next one. Hasta la próxima.
Hasta la vista. Ciao, baby. Ciao, bella.